Okay, hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about how to draw the Lewis structure of covalent molecules. Now, knowing the Lewis structure of covalent molecules is very important. Just wanting to determine the shape of covalent molecules and to predict the valence shell electron pair based on the valence shell electron pair repulsion. We can also predict the electron state arrangement of the molecule. And on the other hand, it is used to determine whether the molecule is polar or non-polar. Okay, so this is therefore very important. So to draw the Lewis structure of covalent molecules, there are certain steps that we should follow. The first step is just determining the total valence electrons, the total valence electrons of the molecule. This is the first step. And under this step, if the molecule is polyatomic anion, if it is polyatomic anion, we should add, okay, we should add the charge on the ion, onto the valence electrons. And if it is a polyatomic cation, we should subtract, okay, we should subtract the charge from the valence electrons, okay, the total valence electrons. So this is the first step. The second step is determining or drawing the skeletal structure. So when we draw the skeletal structure, first we need to determine the central atom. The central atom from the molecule should be the one which has the least electronegative atom, or that means the more electropositive atom, and it should be also larger in size, and it should be an atom which can make more number of covalent bonds, can make more number of covalent bonds. Okay, this is the second step. So the rest of the atoms are becoming terminal atoms. They become terminal atoms. So this is the second step. In the third step, we should subtract the number of bonded electrons from the total valence electron, okay, this is the third, and we should divide those electrons to the number of terminal atoms, the number of terminal atoms, the number of terminal atoms, and must be placed on terminal atoms as lone pair electrons. This is the third, and in the fourth step, if there is any remaining electron, any remaining electrons, place them or put them on the central atom, And in the last step, if there is an atom in the molecule which doesn't obey the octet rule, okay, if there is an atom which doesn't fulfill its octet, make a multiple bond with its neighboring atom. Okay, these are the steps that we should follow while we are drawing the Lewis structure of covalent molecules. Now let's come to an example to apply all these rules and steps. So we are asked to draw the Lewis structure of nitrate ion, for example. From this nitrate ion, first we need to determine the total valence electrons. The total valence electrons is the sum of the valence electrons of each atom. So nitrogen has a valence electron of 5, and oxygen has valence electron of 6. So 6 times 3 plus 1 electron, because since this molecule is a polyatomic anion, we should add that charge on the total valence electron based on the first step. So this becomes 6 times 3, 18, plus 1, 19, 19 plus 5, it is 24. So there are a total of 24 electrons. Then after this, in the second step, we should draw the skeletal structure of the molecule. Since from the atoms nitrogen and oxygen, and if we compare their electronegativity, oxygen is more electronegative than nitrogen, and nitrogen is relatively more electropositive. Due to that reason, nitrogen atom is central and oxygen is terminal. Okay, terminal. So we should draw the skeletal structure by making a single covalent molecule with each of the terminal atoms, just like this. So we have used 6 electrons in total to make this skeletal structure. So in the third step, we should subtract the electrons which are used for making a skeletal structure from that of the total valence electron. So remaining electrons are 24 minus 1, 2, 3 covalent bonds means 6 electrons. So this is equals to 18 electrons are left. So now the molecule becomes just like this. We should put these 18 electrons for around the terminal atoms. So we should divide 18 electrons by 3. So each of the atoms will get 6 electrons. So no remaining electron. afterward. So we should put the 6 electrons on the terminal atoms, just like this. Now, in the fourth step, if there is any remaining electron, put the remaining electron on the central atom. It says, so no remaining electron. No remaining electron. So we should jump the fourth step. When we come to the fifth step, if there is an atom which doesn't fulfill its octet, make a multiple bond so as to fulfill the octet rule. So here nitrogen doesn't fulfill the octet rule. It has a total of 6 electrons around it. So it must keep in making a multiple bond with one of the neighboring atoms to fulfill the octet rule. So we should make a double bond with one of the terminal atoms. So here oxygen has 6 lone electrons. That means 3 pairs of lone pair electrons. So one of the lone pair should make a multiple bond with nitrogen, and it becomes just like this. The molecule will have such kind of a structure. Still, each of the terminal atoms fulfills the octet rule. The central atom also fulfills the octet rule. So afterwards, we should make just such kind of bracket so that we should put a minus side on this bracket. So this is the correct Lewis structure of the covalent molecule, that is nitrate ion. Well, now let's come to the next example. Let's draw the Lewis structure of sulfur dioxide. If we take this molecule and if we are asked to draw the Lewis structure of sulfur dioxide, first we need to know the total valence electrons. The total valence electrons of this molecule is 6 plus 2 times 6, which is equals to 18 electrons. Because sulfur and oxygen has 6 valence electrons. Now, in the second step, we should draw the skeletal structure: sulfur, oxygen, oxygen, just like this. This is the skeletal structure. For the skeletal structure, 2 pairs of electrons or 4 electrons are used. Then after this, we should subtract the electrons used for skeletal structure from the total valence electrons. So the remaining electrons will be 18 electrons minus 4 electrons, which is found to be 14 electrons. This is the remaining electrons. So let's divide the remaining electrons by 2. So 14 divided by 2, the terminal atoms are 2 here. So 14 for 2, each can get 7 electrons. But this is not advisable because the terminal atoms cannot hold electrons greater than 8. Due to that reason, already each of the oxygen atoms gets 2 electrons. So oxygen requires 6 more electrons. So we should not give 7 electrons for each. So we should first give 6 electrons for each. So 6 times 2, 12. So there are a remaining electrons of 2 from this. So we should first give 6 electrons for each of the terminal atoms. So it becomes just like this. Just like this. So that 6 electrons for each of the oxygen atoms should be placed around. Now, after this, we should put the remaining 2 electrons for the central atom. So we have 2 electrons remaining. So sulfur, oxygen here, so that the remaining electrons should be placed on the central atom sulfur. Since sulfur is a central atom, because its electronic negativity as compared to oxygen is lesser. That is the reason, and its atomic size is relatively large, and sulfur is more electropositive. That is the reason. Now this is the Lewis structure up to the fourth step. Now in the fifth step, we are we have to fulfill the octet rule for each of the atoms. Each of the oxygen atoms fulfills the octet rule, but sulfur doesn't. Due to that reason, since now sulfur has total of 6 electrons, it requires 2 more electrons, so we should make a multiple bond with one of the oxygen atoms. So now let's make a multiple bond with this oxygen atom. Now this is after we make a multiple bond. Now we should check whether the octet rule is fulfilled or not. Oxygen already has 8 electrons here. This oxygen has 8 electrons, and sulfur also has 8 electrons. The octet rule is fulfilled. So this is the correct Lewis structure of the molecule. Now let's add one more. Let's draw the Lewis structure of NO2, for example. Here the total valence electrons is found to be 5 plus 2 times 6, which is equals to 17 electrons. The central element is nitrogen because it is less electronegative than oxygen. So nitrogen and oxygen, just like this. Since there are 2 oxygen atoms, we already make 2 covalent bonds here, and we use 4 electrons, so we should subtract 4 electrons from 70, so we are left with 13 electrons. Now these 13 electrons should be divided for the terminal atoms, the number of terminal atoms. When we divide 13 by 2, each of the oxygen atoms will get 6 electrons. 6 times 2, 12. So we are left with 1 remaining electrons. So now let's put 6 electrons from each of the oxygen atoms, just like this. Then after this, we should put 1 electron on the central atom, just like this. Now, each of the oxygen atoms fulfills the octet rule, but nitrogen doesn't. So nitrogen now has 2 plus 2, 4, 4 plus 1, 5 electrons. So it is better to help this nitrogen atom to have or to possess electrons closer to 8 electrons. So now we should make a multiple bond with one of the terminal atoms. So now the base structure for nitrogen dioxide is found to be this one. Now there is one lone electron, which is an unpaired electron on the nitrogen atom. Even though this nitrogen dioxide molecule doesn't fulfill the octet rule, but it is relatively stable by making nitrogen to have 7 electrons. So today we try to see about how to draw the Lewis structure of covalent molecules. So there are about 5 steps that we should follow. The first step is determining the total valence electron of the covalent molecule. Next, we should draw the skeletal structure by making the central atom and as a center and the terminal atoms around the central atom, and by making or by using a single covalent bond. Then after that we should determine the remaining electrons by subtracting the electron used for skeletal structure from that of the total valence electron. Then afterwards, the remaining electron should be placed on the central atom. After we place or we put the remaining electrons on the central atom, we should check whether each of the atoms fulfills the octet rule or not. If they doesn't fulfill, we need to make a multiple bond. When you say multiple bond, it means either a double bond or a triple bond with one of the neighboring atoms. So in such a way, we can draw the Lewis structure and we can determine all its characteristics of the molecule. Thank you very much.